Welcome to the Physician's Guide to Doctoring, a practical guide for practicing physicians. Dr. Bradley Block interviews experts in and out of medicine to find out everything we should have been learning while we were memorizing Krebs cycle. The ideas expressed on this podcast are those of the interviewer and interviewee and do not represent those of their respective employers. And now, here's Dr. Bradley Block.
Dr. Jimmy Turner, thanks for coming back to the podcast. It's been a while.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. I'm super excited to be here and about a topic that I don't podcast about very often. So this is going to be fun.
Yeah, our last episode was about just the mindset, about money and the 80-20 rule, and it was a lot of great material. So for all the listeners, definitely check back. It was definitely well before COVID. I think it was probably 2019 when we recorded the episode. So what kind of stuff before we get into this episode, which is going to have nothing to do with medicine, and all about cooking meat, mostly smoking meat. But before we get into that, just tell the listeners what you're up to nowadays.
Yeah. So my two favorite topics are still money and mindset. And so, I've got a couple things on the burner right now. I've got medical degree, financial university. It's opening up next month. And then, the alpha coaching experience for burned out doctors. And so I'm super excited about both those things. Been working on it for a really long time. And actually I have a third thing. I got a book coming out in a few months. It's called Determined, how burned out doctors can thrive in a broken medical system. So those are kind of three big things for me. But if people want to check out stuff, the Physician Philosopher podcast is still kicking, and we alternate money and mindset episodes every week because those are my two things. It's what I love to do. It's what I love talking about.
And we actually had someone who's involved in your podcast on the episode a couple of weeks ago, Dr. Alicia Taylor.
Yeah,
we can hear her there as well, right?
Yeah, Dr. Taylor. Yeah, exactly. Dr. Taylor and I are running MDFU together, and she is an amazing human being. Super excited to be working with her, and really love everything that she does. So I'm a big fan of Alicia.
What is the alpha coaching experience? Could you just elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, so ACE is a 12-week coaching program for doctors who, probably I'd say 99% of people are either burned out in medicine or they're working through a career transition of some kind. They're thinking about taking a new job. They're thinking about, a leadership position. They are considering a change in some way, shape, or form in medicine, thinking about going part-time, stepping away completely. And so doctors come into ACE to basically get help thinking through that process. And we teach them a step-by-step method to really kind of fall back in love with medicine, to be honest with you. And if they decide to go a different path, then they at least do that from a position of strength instead of from a position of scarcity, where they're running away from a very broken medical system that I think we're all experiencing right now. So yeah, ACE is all about empowering physicians through teaching them about money, mindset, and kind of life.
Well, I think that's a good lead in to smoking meat, because you can't really have a scarcity mindset when you are smoking meat. So the reason I thought of this episode is I saw you posted something on Facebook about getting a smoker. And that's something that I've been doing ever since I moved to the suburbs. So I used to live in Queens, an apartment building, in Manhattan before that. And so you can't really do that out there. You can't really have that out on your balcony. So once we got a house in the suburbs, I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to get a smoker. So I saw you did that. So let's first talk about your smoking experience.
Yeah. So my smoking experience actually comes from my father-in-law. He's a big smoker. Yeah, pit boss. I mean, that's his thing. So, I got a pit boss grill just like he does. And we went to the backstory on this is actually kind of funny. So we're trying to figure out where we were going to do Christmas, last year. So, December of 2021. And, we had, my brother and, sister-in-law flying in from California. We had family coming up from South Carolina and basically the border of Georgia. And so we were going to have several people in our house, for this gathering. And, my parent-in-laws, my mother and father-in-law, their house isn't quite big enough to have that many people in it. It's kind of three bedroom, 2-bath kind of house. And it's going to have 12 people. By myself, I have a family of 5. Right. And so I was like, hey, what do you think about coming up to my house for Christmas? He's like, well, yeah, that sounds great. We love your house. Don't get me wrong. But, who's going to smoke the roast beast? And I said, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, you don't have a smoker. I can't do it if I come up there. And he's just like, this is like his thing. This is what he lives for.
Oh no. Like that's, it doesn't matter how many people we need to squeeze into our tiny house. But if we can't, it's the one entree that really makes or breaks the holiday. Yeah.
Oh, it's so funny. So it was like an existential crisis moment for him. He's like, I'd love to come, but you don't have a smoker. And I said, well, hey, what if I buy a smoker and so that you can, do that on the grill, when you get here. And so he's like, no, you don't have to do all that. And I was like, no, I want you to want to come. And that's a big deal for you. So I'm happy to spend the money to invest in our relationship, buy this smoker. And hey, it comes with the added benefit that I get to mess around with it and learn how to smoke some meat. Right. So I ended up buying this Pit Boss grill and that he recommended. And, we got the pellets, and it's a pellet grill. And I love it, honestly. I'd say that what I've cooked the most since then has been ribs. I've done that several times now because it's something that doesn't take quite as long to smoke. Because for me, the thing that I was worried about was like, man, I hear most smoking lots of meat takes a really long time. And so the ribs, I mean, that's a good 5-6 hour kind of thing. It's not really like a 10, 12, 14 hour kind of thing. So I
Just to be
haven't
clear, pork ribs. These are pork ribs.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, they are.
Yeah.
They are pork ribs, and St. Louis ribs is what I normally do. So,
Okay.
but yeah, I've really enjoyed it. But I basically got this grill for my grandfather, my kid's grandfather, and have loved it.
So when you chose pellet, why did you choose pellet?
I'm going to give you the honest answer because he told me to. But
Okay.
the shorter answer. So I have a gas grill.
Yeah.
And I have friends that have green eggs. I have friends that have other kinds of grills. And for me, like just eating the meat that came off his grill, like it was always just very consistent. And so like keeping the temperature the same and having it fed the way that it is.
Yeah.
Like being able to kind of set it low and slow was really, I think, important to me when I was buying this grill. And as far as I knew, that was kind of one of the best ways to do it.
Yeah,
I
well,
could be
also
wrong though.
for the listeners, the pellet grill, it's so the original company that did it was Traeger, and I think they were like a sawmill company
Mm.
or something, and they had all this leftover sawdust. They're like, how do we monetize sawdust? Oh, we'll compress them into little pellets. And I'm not sure if this is the timeline, but maybe they made pellet heaters first, because that's a thing. That you could use these little pellets. It's not the same pellets though, because the pellet you need specific flavor of wood to make sure that you're putting the right flavor into your meat. So it's not the same thing that's going to like keep your house warm. So what they do is these pellets are fed into an auger that you can then increase or decrease the rate of. The faster you burn them, the hotter it burns. The lower the lower the rate you burn them, the lower the temperature. And so it's a way of internally regulating the temperature. And so what you'd have is you have a thermometer for the pellet, for the smoker. And then you have a a thermometer for the meat. And so at least with mine, it's Wi-Fi enabled. So I can go for I got a Rectech pellet also.
I was going to ask what you had. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I can go for a run or something. And then although it's hosed me a couple of times when I've left it, and I'll talk about that. So I have the temperature in the meat. I've got the temperature and you set it. And so if the temperature gets too hot, it slows the auger. If it gets too low, then it increases the rate. And so you don't have to, it's like an oven. Like it just keeps the same temperature.
Yeah.
So especially if you've got your alpha coaching experience, you're a full-time anesthesiologist, you've got 3 kids, you're writing a book, right? Like you don't have time to tend to what real smokers call a stick burner, which is where you get these like logs that you split, or maybe you buy them split and you need to feed them into this offset thing, and you need to increase the airflow or decrease the airflow and feed the fire. And look, we don't have time for that. And so with a pellet grill, you get to smoke the meat without having to tend to it at all. Like it is literally set it and forget it.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, that was a huge thing for me. Now that you're mentioning that, actually, we had this big golf tournament. So I love golf. I'm not good at it. Those are different things. But we had this big golf tournament, right? And so like I was getting ready for it, and I wanted to go to the range for an hour or two to get ready for this tournament. And I cooked ribs that day, and it was like the 3-hour portion at the beginning. And I set it. I went to the range for a couple hours, came back, and it was doing its thing. But you're right. If you for at least for the one that I have, if you don't kind of, I don't know what the word I want to use is, but disturb the pellets just to make sure that they're actually going into the auger,
Yeah.
It will turn off.
Well,
So
what happened with mine is what I need to do is between cooks, I need to disassemble it. I need to clean out the auger. I need to grab a handful of pellets. I need to put new ones in because what happens is the auger will overfill, and then you've got like this, and then it can't. It just shuts off. I mean, you end
Hmm.
up with this big plume of smoke. It looks like it's on fire. It's not actually on fire. It's a smoker. It's just putting out tons of smoke. The temperature drops down, and then you're screwed. So if you're too far away from home, you're done.
Yep.
I mean, and every time that's happened to me, I had to take the meat off and finish it in the oven. Like you can't like,
Oh, wow.
I mean, I could disassemble it, keep the meat off for a little bit, I guess, but you know, it's such a pain.
Yeah.
So,
So Brad, I'm curious, what's your, you've got a lot more experience in this. What's your favorite meat to smoke?
so I've found chuck to be pretty foolproof. So we're Jewish, and so we keep this like kosher style. My wife and
Sure.
I like it's the story is like I used to keep kosher style in and out of the house. But then when we got married, we, met somewhere in the middle. So we're like, we'll keep kosher style in the house, but out of the house, we can eat whatever we want. It makes
Yeah.
sense to us. It's like
Okay.
we don't practice that much. We don't go to synagogue or anything. I mean, eventually my kids are going to go to, Hebrew school and get bar mitzvah, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But like, so we don't have pork in the house, which is awful for us because, it's time to feel bad for me a little bit because we would be so my wife actually teaches baking classes and cooking classes at a local farm slash bakery, and I
Uh,
smoke the meat. Like she makes us out of. So between the two of us, we would do pork so well. Like
you
we
would.
could, it's real, we're really missing out here. Like we could, if
Yeah.
we cooked pork in the house, it would be really good. So I'm limited to, chicken, fish, and beef. And so I do brisket, and it's come out well most of the time, but not all the
Yeah.
time. Whereas chuck, if you screw it up, it doesn't really matter that much because you're pulling it apart anyway. You're making pulled beef. And
Yeah.
so if the fat like drips off of it, you're mixing it back into it. So it really doesn't matter that much. And you add some
Yeah.
sauce and
Yeah.
it's good. So chuck is
Chuck's the way
my
to go,
favorite.
huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I've got a solution actually for your problem. So you can just cook the pork and give it to me and I will consume it. I'm just kidding. No, I really want to do a brisket, but I'm not going to lie. It scares me a little bit after I read about it and how people can screw it up. And it does take 10 to 14 hours to like cook something that may not turn out good. But
It's a commitment.
at some point I just gotta jump in there and do it. So,
Well, you just try it. So here's the key, right? One of the keys is dry brining. So you have to dry brine the meat for two reasons. One is because it makes it more flavorful. And by brine, I mean like, put salt on it. We put brown sugar in our dry brine, and it's
Mm,
not, you can get a pre-mixed one, but if you do, I recommend you mix some extra brown sugar in, like a lot of brown sugar. You first actually you coat it with mustard as a
okay.
binder, meaning it gets all that stuff to stick. So you coat it with mustard, crappy yellow mustard. It doesn't make it a mustardy flavor because all of that's going to evaporate and burn off anyway. And what you're left is just like the powdery spices that are part of the mustard. And then you put on your rub, and then you wrap it in saran wrap, and you leave it in the fridge overnight. And so then that dry rub, and we do this with salmon too.
Huh.
We smoke salmon, and it's awesome. It makes the salmon so flavorful. So you do this dry rub the night before, and it helps it to form a crust, helps flavor, and the best part about it is it traps in the moisture because all that salt that gets into the meat is then going to hang on to the. I don't know what the right chemistry term is. I mean, we're doctors here. Like I should probably know. It's like the osmotic pressure
I
or
was a
something like
chemistry
that.
major and I can't help you. So
Yeah,
no, nothing. Got
somehow,
nothing.
but it's going to hang on to the moisture for longer because as you're doing this long cook, you're going to dry out the meat. You're going to turn it into jerky. And so if you dry brine it right before, it helps to hang on to some of that moisture. So you dry brine it, wrap it in saran wrap. The next day, first thing in the morning, you get that brisket on.
Mhm.
And what's eventually going to happen after 4 or 5 hours is you're going to hit something called the rest. And the rest for someone who's never been through it before is terrifying because you're like, the temperature is not changing. It's not changing. It's at 145 degrees, maybe it's 160 degrees. And you're like, it's been an hour and the temperature has not gone up in the meat. I don't know what to do. So when it hits the rest, what I do, that's when I wrap it. So I wrap it in foil, and then eventually you can either finish it off in the oven, or you can finish it off in the smoker if you're not concerned about burning your pellets. So wrap it in foil. That's going to trap in the moisture. Recently, I tried doing it without wrapping it.
Mm-hmm.
Dried out. I had
Oh,
read on like a Facebook forum, people were like, "Yeah, I do it without wrapping all the time." It's like, sure, it's a pain in the ass to do that in the middle of my day. Like now I don't have to worry about it. I'll just, set my temperature probe to my alarm goes off on my phone when it hits the right temperature. Great. Now I don't have to do anything. So I tried it
right.
and I screwed up a bunch of meat. Right. So um
Well, and brisket's expensive too, right?
brisket has gotten, yeah, and it's gotten even pricier. Yeah. So brisket is not cheap. Chuck is relatively cheap though. So if you're afraid of brisket, try chuck first and see how it goes. Get a bunch of them from Costco. That's where we get our meat.
Yeah, yeah.
They do a
I'll
good
have to
job.
try. I'll have to try the chuck first. I'm also kind of curious though. So we're talking about smoking. Do you guys sous vide at all?
That's something that I've seen in a lot of those Facebook groups. I mean, for me, it's like boiling it, steaming it. I mean, it just sounds. I get it. I actually did something. I've seen that for like a reverse sear,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you get your meat to the rare temperature, to the perfect temperature in the sous vide,
Yep.
and then you let it cool, and then you sear it. So now
Mm-hmm.
you've got it's rare, and then you've got the Maillard reaction, whatever it is, that reaction that's just you're not trapping it. For the listeners, when you sear something, you're not trapping anything in. You're creating, just you're caramelizing it, you're creating a different flavor on the outside. It's called I think it's the Maillard reaction. So you're not trapping anything in, but you're just adding a different bunch of flavors to it. So yeah. So no, I haven't tried it, although I did reverse sear a tenderloin recently, and
Oh.
it was awesome. So I smoked it on the smoker for like 3 hours
Uh-huh.
until it reached an internal of like, I think it was 120, 125, let it cool for a bit, and then broiled it in the oven. Because the thing with our smokers, at least with mine, is it doesn't get super, super hot.
Yeah, I
So
know.
it was like 15 minutes in the broiler, and then it came out awesome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what's your deal with sous vide?
Yeah, so that's actually kind of so I grew up and didn't really know anything about cooking. And I remember I was actually in a CT anesthesia case in residency, and this one guy like just kept talking about sous vides, and how he's got this dual sous vide device, and it's like this immersion warmer, and how it gets the meat to the perfect temperature. And that was like my first foray into kind of cooking, to be honest with you.
You started with
And
sous vide. I don't really
yeah,
cook
well,
much, but I'm gonna try this
it's
water bath
and
thing.
the reason why, because I talked to him, it was just so simple. Like
Yeah.
I mean, you put the meat, like you get the flavor on it. If it's chicken or something like that, you put like rosemary and a few other things, garlic on it, and like you basically put it in a bag, put it in this pot, and then you got the immersion warmer that just swirls the water around at the temperature, and it will you do it for a certain amount of time depending on how big the meat is, what the temperature is you want, like whether it's pork chops or chicken or whatever, and and I'll be honest, like it really does make that consistency pretty much perfect every time. You can over sous vide something if you keep it in too long. There used to be like this old wives' tale that if you keep it in there, like it can never go bad. And it's like no, if you if you
Screwed up.
keep it in that thing
It's
long
like
enough, it
you open
definitely
that
turns
bag
into
up and it's
mush.
just like you pour the meat out.
Yeah, it's just disgusting. It's totally disgusting. But it is also a Wi-Fi device, and so you can control it from your phone in terms of when you start it, when you stop it, and yeah. So we don't do it a ton anymore now that I've got the smoker, because that's kind of become the thing that I enjoy doing. But yeah, I found it to be a pretty easy way to do chicken or pork chops, and then I would take it outside and I would sear it on my gas grill. And really, is a really simple way, and it does it in like an hour or two, so it's a pretty painless process. If smoking, you're like listening to to us right now, and you're like 6 to 12 hours, I mean that's a really long time. Like I guess sous vide is not smoking, just for the record, it's not smoking. But I also have sous vided. I don't even know what the word is for that. I have gone through the
Sous
process
vide?
of using a sous vide, right? And on ribs too. There's a way to do it with ribs, and so I'd put them in a cooler and sous vide the cooler with ribs in it, St. Louis style ribs too. And so like
Wait. What do you mean sous vide the cooler? I don't understand
so,
the like.
so this device, it's like a conical device. It's probably, I don't know, 3 inches, 4 inches in diameter. And it's got a blade in it that, swirls the water around in whatever device, in whatever container you put it in. So whether it's
Okay.
a metal pan, a metal, just whatever, I mean, you name it, like pan, whatever, or in a cooler, like, I mean, like an ice cooler, like you'd bring to a sporting event or the beach, right? Like, and so for ribs, it obviously has to be much larger than like, just a normal pan, right?
Okay.
And so you can use a cooler and put this sous vide in it, and it clips. It has a clip on it, and so you just
Okay.
make sure that it's below the water level, and it
Okay.
will warm up that body of water.
So it
Uh,
circulates the water and heats it to the temperature. So it's
Correct,
like a
and then
heating
it
coil
keeps it
slash
exact at
rotating.
that
Yeah,
exact
yeah.
temperature,
Okay.
which is so it's basically like the idea of a smoker, but in water.
Okay. Okay.
It is a low and slow kind of process. Now, if you do ribs, it does take a very long time. It's a kind of a multiple day process. But for chicken, pork chop, something really simple, easy, couple hours sort of thing. It's a easy fix if you don't want to go through the process of a 6 to 12 hour cook.
So then how do you flavor the meat in the
So,
sous vide? It's like, so you're putting these things in the bag with it, and somehow it
yeah.
like you're putting like
So,
whole sprigs of rosemary, or you're like putting a rub on.
yeah. So you can probably do either, but whole sprigs of rosemary for like the chicken with garlic and a couple other and it will flavor the meat as it's in there. And some people, I mean, it can be as simple as putting it in a gallon sized bag after you do that. And you can also brine the meat the same way you were talking about earlier. So you can brine it beforehand. But you can then just put it in a gallon sized bag and put a clip on it. But the people that are, doing it, quote unquote, properly, they get, sealers, right? And then they can just they seal the entire meat in like a vacuum sealer and then
Yeah, that's what I've seen. Yeah.
put that bag inside the container, whatever you're using to sous vide.
Yeah.
But it's the same idea. It's a low, slow, steady temperature that's just consistent.
Wait, so you're
Instead
just
of,
using a Ziploc bag? You're putting the
yeah,
meat in like a Ziploc bag and like trying to get as much water out of it, I guess,
yeah. So once
before
the
you
meat,
zip it up?
yeah. So once the water's heated up and you put the Ziploc bag in, it will naturally kind of crimp on the meat and release the gas.
Okay.
And then you can just like literally just clip it to the side. I have an actual vacuum sealer now, also from my father-in-law, because that's just this is his thing. But back in the day, yeah, when I started, I would just use the gallon sized bags and just let the air release after you put it in, and then just clip it and put it on the side of the thing that whatever you're using.
Nice. Nice, nice, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely, yeah, because that's what we need in our kitchen, in our house. More stuff.
Yeah, of
More
course. Yeah,
stuff.
it's another appliance. My
Yeah.
wife loves just tons and tons of appliances in our kitchen. Actually, I say that jokingly, but to this day we've been married for 13 years. Yeah, we're about to be 13 years, and we do not own a toaster. So
Who needs
I don't.
toast?
Yeah,
You can make
needs
make that
toast?
in a frying pan
Yeah, or the oven.
or the oven. There you go.
Which is completely inappropriate use of an oven, by the way, but it works.
No toaster. I'm trying to think if we're missing anything, but I think the answer is no. We have just an inordinate number of appliances between my meat hobby and her baking and cooking. We've got we've got a lot of stuff. Although one day I want to get a pizza oven. And actually that's the Kamado, I'm still noodling with the idea of maybe getting a Kamado once my kids are a little older and more self-sufficient.
Yeah.
Like the big green egg, that's what you're talking
Yep.
about. Like you can use that like a pizza oven. You can
Yeah.
get it really hot, and
Really
then you
hot.
can you put the pizza on it. You could also use it like a smoker, and it tends to be one that you don't have to, sounds redundant. You don't have to tend to, because it's so well insulated that once you get it to the right temperature, then you don't have to mess around with it. You just keep the meat in there until it's done. And then you got your like Wi-Fi thermometers that are giving you all the information you need.
Yeah, no, I've got a couple of friends that will swear by the green egg or the Kamado, how you say that, and they love it, and they do pizzas on it all the time. So I think that it's just a fun hobby to get into, honestly. Like I bought it from my father-in-law, but I've really enjoyed it now. The chuck, I guess, is next, and then maybe the brisket after that.
Yes. So couple recommendations. So one, I got smoke tubes.
Smoke tubes. What's a smoke tube?
So a smoke tube is like, it's like a hexagonal, like cylinder shaped thing that's metal and has a lot of holes in it. And what you
Okay.
do is it's a bit of a pain in the butt to get it started, but then it slowly burns the pellets along the cylinder. So it's a way to add smoke. So one of the problems that people have with pellet smokers is they don't give a lot of smoke flavor. And that's been my experience as well, especially with a with a shorter smoke. If you compare the smoke flavor of a pellet smoker to a stick burner, or I actually, when I first got into smoking, I used a gas smoker because I was like, it's the cheapest one and it seems to be the easiest one to just set and forget, aside from pellet, which are significantly more expensive. So I was like, I got to try this hobby out with something cheap to see if I'm actually going to do it. And so the way the propane ones work is they just have a pan where you put the these little smoke chips that a propane burner under it is going to slowly burn and turn to smoke. It's similar to the way the electric ones work. And then you have a water pan above it to make sure that you're not drying out your meat as much. And that's it. And so you can turn up and down the temperature. It's not an internal loop though. I think there's one out there by Masterbuilt that does self-regulate, but I've heard that tray isn't that big. So then you have to constantly feed in more chips. And the smoke flavor was really good. And when I switched to the pellet smoker, I was like, this is not the same. Like it is not that smoky tasting, especially when I'm doing a chicken or fish, which is not on it, because you're not slow cooking those things. If you slow cook them, you're going to dry them out. So you have to just use it like an oven. So if you got a smoke tube or two, which is what I do, you get those started and then they're putting out much more smoke on top of what your smoker's doing, but it's not adding to the temperature because it's just kind of slowly burning these.
So where do you physically put this smoke tube?
Just on top of the grill.
Oh, cool. Yeah. It's like something I can get from like Amazon.
Yeah. For like $20-$30, maybe something like that. And you just put the pellets in there. And then the other thing is finding the right pellets. So I prefer 100% hickory pellets because they're, I think one of the only pellets that has so hickory has a relatively strong flavor. Mesquite has an even stronger flavor, but the mesquite ones are never 100% mesquite. There's like a lot of filler in there because I think otherwise it wouldn't work as a pellet. Like it wouldn't burn appropriately or totally or hot enough or
so hickory is the way to go.
Yeah. So 100% hickory. And then, and then the smoke tubes help when you're doing something like fish. So fish, if you look up how to smoke fish, it's going to tell you like salmon. Salmon's actually the only fish that I've smoked. It's going to tell you that you need to wet brine it and then dry it and blah, 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 blah. And then you've got all these steps to do, which I did once and it was good, but it was such a pain in the ass. So what one of my friends is like, dude, it's full of fat. Fat is what soaks up the smoke flavor. Just use it like an oven. Just cook like you normally would, which I did on the gas smoker and it tasted awesome. Then tried it on the pellet. Wasn't enough smoke. But now I do it on a little lower temperature with 2 smoke tubes, and then it tastes smoky, but still not as smoky as it did on my gas smoker. So
that is really interesting. So gas smoker produces more smoke taste, but it's less expensive.
Yes, but it doesn't have that internal loop because it's just like a metal frame that's poorly insulated, and then a ring on the bottom where the propane comes out. And that's it. Like that's the whole setup. So you're not paying for all the, Wi-Fi connectivity and temperature probes and all the stuff that come with our pellet grills. Like it's not a mechanical, it's just like there's a little regulator on how much propane comes out at once. That's the whole device.
Yeah. No, I mean, sounds like you need to get some smoke tubes.
Yes. I would strongly recommend smoke tubes. There's an affiliate link on my website.
Oh, boom.
I'm just kidding. Okay. I just made that up. I don't have any
There
affiliate
totally
links on my
should
website.
be. Amazon affiliates to the rescue.
I should. That's going to be the next iteration of my website is I will actually have affiliate links.
Yeah. The show is actually sponsored by Smoke Tubes, right?
Yeah. Smoketubes.com.
Smoketubes.com. Love it. Yeah. It's been a fun little project to kind of get into. And actually the only thing even similar to this that I ever did was brew beer. I used to brew beer back before so I got 3 kids. My son is now 8, and it's probably around the time he was born, maybe a little after that I stopped. But I used to love to brew beer. But that was like you can't walk away from that process. Got like a turkey burner and a giant, 10-gallon thing of
My
hot
favorite
liquid.
my favorite brewery on Long Island, because there's so many microbrews everywhere. My favorite on Long Island is run by an anesthesiologist. I don't know if he's practicing
Oh,
anymore. I think he's probably doing the beer full time because it's so successful.
what's it called?
Great South Bay Brewery. So the Great South Bay
Great
is like
South Bay Brewery.
between like I think Fire Island
Yeah.
and Long Island, the Great South Bay, and
Yeah.
so Great South Bay Brewery.
I'll,
Yeah, check
I'll
it
have
out.
to, I'll have to check that one out. Yeah. Cause next time I come to New York, I you guys also have my favorite, bar that I've ever been to. It's called the Dead Rabbit. It's in the Wall Street district.
Interesting.
And I just happened to be there to give a conference one time. This guy's like, you got to check this place out. And like, you walk into the bar there, and if you just like walk in and don't realize that there's an upstairs, like you'll just go in and it seems like a normal bar, but like there's a place where you can like write your name down. They give you like a little beeper, and then it's like you get put on a wait list.
Like a speakeasy type of thing?
Yeah, it's exactly what it's like. And you go upstairs, and they've got this like, more secluded area, and you can sit at the bar, watch them make the drinks, and talk to the bartenders. They've got this special kind of book that walks through. It's really pretty cool. And so next time I go, I'll check out that brewery and go back to the Dead Rabbit.
Dead Rabbit. Link in the show notes. No, actually, probably not.
Smoking meat and drinking beer.
That's the life. That's the life. Well, Jimmy, it has been a lot of fun catching up with you and talking smoking meat and sous vide with you. We're going to need another device in our kitchen and Alpha Coaching. So where can people find you online? Where can we find your online presence?
Yeah, the best way to find my stuff is to use the same podcast player you're listening to right now and go to the Physician Philosopher podcast. We talk about money and mindset. And if you want to learn more, you can go to the physicianphilosopher.com. And we've got more information there too as well.
Jimmy Turner, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for having me, Brad. Ton of fun.
That was Dr. Bradley Block at the Physician's Guide to Doctoring. He can be found at physiciansguidetodoctoring.com or wherever you get your podcasts. If you have a question for a previous guest or have an idea for a future episode, send a comment on the webpage. Also, please be sure to leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform. We'll see you next time on the Physician's Guide to Doctoring.